Welcome to Simulation Exam number 3. In this practice exam, we're going to study chapters 8 through 11. Let's start with chapter 8, which represents 8 points on the state exam. Question number 1. Personal property permanently attached to the land becomes a. Anything permanently attached becomes a fixture. It doesn't matter whether it's attached to the wall, ceiling, or floor. What matters is that it's permanently attached. Let's move on to the next one. A tenancy by the entireties between spouses means that the real estate is owned by a married couple. So, tenancy by the entireties is a form of ownership that exists exclusively between spouses. Next one. Question 3. A fixture can be converted back into personal property by severance. When you remove something from the wall or uninstall it, it becomes personal property again. Question 4. A daughter transferred a property to her elderly mother with the condition that the property would return to the daughter upon the mother's death. What does the daughter have? Let's set it up like this. A daughter gives her mother a property with the condition that the property will return to her at her mother's death. In this case, the mother, although that's not what the question asks, has a life estate, and the daughter has a reversion estate, option C. Question 5. The document that allows the buyer of a cooperative to occupy a unit is the, and you must know this by heart, the proprietary lease. Whenever you see the word cooperative, think proprietary lease. That's essentially the title the buyer receives in a co-op. Question 6. Which of the following is the most comprehensive type of ownership? That means, which one includes the greatest number of rights? The broadest form of ownership, as we studied in Chapter 8, is the fee simple estate. That's exactly how it will appear on the state exam. Fee simple estate. Question 7. Juanito bought 10 boxes of roof tiles from a local hardware store. What type of property are these tiles before being installed? That's the key. Before being installed, the tiles are personal property. Once they're installed, they become fixtures. Question 8. Jim, Matt, and Jack were co-owners of a parcel of land. Matt died, and his share of the land was distributed according to his will as part of his estate to his heirs. What type of ownership interest did Matt have in the property? Here's the key point. Who keeps the deceased owner's share? That's what determines the correct answer. There are 2 possibilities. If the deceased owner's heirs keep his share, this is called a tenancy in common. But if the remaining owners keep the deceased's share, that's a joint tenancy with right of survivorship. So in this question, it says the share was left to his heirs, which means this was a tenancy in common. Question 9. What type of rights are included in a property that borders a river or a flowing body of water? These are riparian rights. That's an easy one. Riparian rights are for properties along rivers or flowing water. Littoral rights are for oceans, seas, or large lakes. Question 10. What document gives the buyer the right to occupy a unit within a cooperative? The key word here is cooperative. The answer is the proprietary lease. That's the document that gives occupancy rights in a co-op. Question 11. Jose and Maria have owned a property together for many years. Jose dies, and Maria becomes the sole owner of the property, not Jose's heirs. What type of tenancy did Jose and Maria have? Be careful. The question is referring to them as partners, not spouses. The key is, who keeps the deceased's share? It says that Maria becomes the owner of Jose's share and not his heirs. That means it's a joint tenancy or joint tenancy with right of survivorship. Both mean the same thing. Question 12. Another term for a verbal or written agreement that does not specify a termination date is, that's the key phrase here, no fixed termination date. When a lease doesn't provide a termination date, it's called a tenancy at will. And remember, the most important characteristic of a tenancy at will is that it has no predetermined end date. Question 13. Which of the following statements about property is incorrect? Let's go through them one by one. A. Properties exist in different sizes and shapes. Of course, that is true. Properties come in all shapes and sizes, so that's not the incorrect one. B. Properties are an excellent alternative within an investment portfolio. That's also true. Real estate is one of the strongest investment assets. D. They provide a variety of legal rights. That's also true. Remember the 4 key rights we always talk about: DUPE, disposition, use, possession, and exclusion. Those are the rights that come with property ownership, so the only one left is C. It says, quantity is material to consider when determining the different forms of ownership. That doesn't make sense. It's unclear and irrelevant. So that's the incorrect statement. C is your answer. Question 14. Carolina gives Alex a property to enjoy for the duration of his life. Upon Alex's death, the property will pass to Juan. What type of interest does Juan hold in the property? Let's picture it. Here's the property. Carolina gives it to Alex, and after Alex's death, it goes to Juan. That means Juan holds a remainder estate. That's the term you'll see on the exam, remainder estate. And what does Alex have? Alex holds a life estate because his ownership lasts only for his lifetime. Question 15. A tenant remains in possession of the rented property after the lease has expired. What type of tenancy does the tenant have? That's the key phrase, after the lease has expired. When a tenant stays beyond the expiration date, the type of tenancy is called a tenancy at sufferance. Question 16. Smith and Brown are business partners. Smith dies, and Brown automatically becomes the sole owner of the property instead of Smith's heirs. What type of ownership did they likely have? That means they had a joint tenancy with right of survivorship. That's the term used when the surviving co-owner automatically inherits the deceased's share. Question 17. Among the 4 criteria used by courts to determine whether an item is legally considered a fixture, which of the following is not included? Here's the key, guys. Remember this simple memory trick. The 4 criteria spell a woman's name. Irma. I stands for intent of the parties. R stands for relationship of the parties. M stands for method of attachment or installation. A stands for adaptation of the article. So, which one should you choose as not included? The one that doesn't fit the name Irma, and that's D, disposition of the article. If you remember the name Irma, you'll solve this question instantly. Any option that doesn't belong to those 4 letters, I, R, M, A, is the wrong one. Question 18. This one you need to memorize. Real property, as defined in Chapter 475 of the Florida Statutes, includes any rights or interests in land and business enterprises. However, it does not include rights related to, remember this for the exam, cemetery lots are not considered real property. Question 19. Which real estate right grants ownership of the land? When someone has ownership of the land, that person is the owner, period. So, ask yourself, is a tenant the owner? No. Therefore, any option that represents a temporary tenancy, something a tenant holds for a limited time, is not the correct answer. Let's go through each option. Tenancy for years. That's a lease. It can last 6 months, 1 year, or even 99 years according to the book. But it's still a lease, not ownership. Tenancy at will. We just reviewed this one. It's another type of tenancy without a fixed duration. Again, not ownership. Tenancy in common. Now this one does grant ownership rights. When you hold property as tenants in common, you are one of the owners. In fact, when one co-owner dies, their share goes to their heirs. That's why this is the correct answer. Tenancy at sufferance. That one is just a distractor. It's not ownership either. Correct answer. Tenancy in common, because it gives you actual ownership rights to the land. So whenever the question mentions ownership or title to the land, think of the type of estate that makes you the owner. Question 20. Which of the following statements is incorrect? Always pay attention to what the question is asking. Here, we're looking for the incorrect statement. A. Property refers to rights in real estate. That's correct. B. Fee estate is equivalent to fee simple absolute. Also correct. C. Only a husband and wife can hold a tenancy by the entireties. Correct as well. That means D must be the incorrect one. Let's check it. D. Through a will, the owner of a life estate can transfer the property. No, that's wrong. A person with a life estate cannot will the property because their rights end upon their death. Their interest lasts only for their lifetime. Once they die, the property automatically transfers to the next designated owner.